Okay, I'd like to talk today about Atman, Anatman, the will to power and the will to surrender. So this is in response to a talk from John Vervaeke on AI sentience. And there was this notion during this conversation regarding AI and how we're supposed to make sure AI achieves a proper morality. And there was some pushback to the idea of viewing AI like a child. And you have to raise up the child in the way you want him to go, like the Bible says in Proverbs. That way he or she shall not depart from it, or that he or she may return to the way that you've provided for it. And so there was pushback saying this is ridiculous to construct this notion of morality for a machine that's not in a polis or a school or a community. And that morality itself is will to power, as Nietzsche said. So I was immediately taken with the response from Schopenhauer regarding surrender and the surrender of the will, but how he took this to be a miserable point. And they almost kind of left a note of futility. I believe Schopenhauer can accurately be called a pessimist for this reason. He didn't see the joy in this surrender, which is what the word Islam means, surrender. But from this Buddhist point of view, which is what Vervaeke is trying to sort of project, a Neoplatonic meets Buddhist view, I would argue he's leaving out Anatman. But if he were, and if anybody wants to explain what Anatman is, the absence of the Atman, they will have to explain what the Atman is, because that's a Hinduistic term. So just again there, the Atman is the higher self. It's a self that's more integrated to the Godhead. Let's say it's at the God feet. We're not one with the universal source and center of creation or reality, but we're closer to it. The raw material suggests the higher self is looking back at us from the future, trying to help us find this path to achieve the oneness and the resonance, but respecting our selfhood and our chance and our free will to go hither and thither. So perhaps sometimes the higher self can just about prune us away from growing the wrong way by putting obstacles in our path, let's say. And yet ultimately we're gonna, even if not in this life, in the next life, we'll get back on the proper path to achieve oneness and resonance with the higher self. Ultimately, there is no higher self. That's what the man realized. He's already one with his higher self, and neither his higher self nor him actually exist. It's Anatman. It's illusion. There is no self. Okay, so, but that's a bit hard to swallow, because I'm sitting here making my hands into a ball gesture. Somebody is doing this, right? And so it's just an illusion of time. And that's still, these are all tricks of the mind, philosophical tricks. But they're important in terms of morality, because morality is therefore uniting with the Atman, okay, achieving resonance with the path of the higher self. And that comes through surrender to all that is, to Allah, okay? And it's what Jesus did, of course, surrendering to the Father's will. And it's what Schopenhauer did not take any pleasure in. And I'm not sure if Nietzsche ever understood the concept, if I'm being fair to him. It's not he saw the Christian surrender as a lack of virtue, as weakness, because and it's not as though Nietzsche didn't have a point about how meekness, if you will, meekness as a virtue, meekness to the Lord may still mean overturning the tables in the temple. That's something we don't fully appreciate. Just by saying a man is a man, woman is a woman, we have been here before, we shall reincarnate, we don't even really die. All that is like radical. It's almost an activist or actival perspective. You're just inherently an activist now if you say those things. And so that's Nietzsche, perhaps he's living again, because it seems as though this is the perfect time to appreciate that surrendering to the path that you've already made to the higher self is radical. But it's radical in that it returns to the center and the source, the center, the hub of the wheel. And from there you can see everything, and you recognize that oneness, that the higher self and I are already one, therefore Anatma, realization of true oneness and a lack of wrong. And from there, it's naturally goodwill to all, because all is ultimately a fragment of the one source and center, which is going to attain wholeness at some future time. But of course, time is an illusion, just a matter of perspective. There is essentially a sense of time-space beyond space-time, or the inverse of space-time are the implicate order, as Bohm called it, compared to the explicate order. It's already there, we're already there, whole, perfect, and at peace. And that's eternity, like Campbell says. It's nothing to do with time. So I hope this is helpful in giving you a sense of peace that is indestructible, because it's built upon time, space, and the oneness with the higher self, which really can't be taken away. It can maybe be delayed or deferred, but time's an illusion. Om Shanti Om.